I think what we're trying to show is that we are just two regular people who are in love and who care for and support and challenge each other just like any other relationship. And the fact of my not being able to walk is not a negative factor in our relationship.
That is Shane Burcaw, one of our two guests today. The other is Hannah Aylward, Shane's fiance. Shane has spinal muscular atrophy, and she doesn't. They are Squirmy and Grubs. I am Seth Carnell, and this is the Go Shout Love podcast. As I mentioned, Shane has SMA. He is also an author of a number of books, including one titled Laughing at My Nightmare. That is also the name of his nonprofit organization that helps people with muscular dystrophy obtain their necessary equipment, as well as teaching children methods for overcoming adversity. They are also implementing a COVID relief program, but I will get to that in a second. Shane and Hannah have a popular YouTube channel called Squirmy and Grubs. They will explain that name in this episode, but in their videos, they share about different elements of their life together, including aspects of being in an interabled relationship. I really hope to meet them in person someday. Through this brief phone conversation, you can tell that Shane and Hannah are funny, they are insightful, and they are a great couple. This episode covers understanding the feelings of people with physical disabilities, as well as the feelings of those closest to them, how they experience the world, and how society views and interacts with them in everyday situations. Shane and Hannah tackle ableism head-on. With the best of intentions, people say things discriminatory or things that are contrary to inclusion. Ignorance isn't the opposite of inclusion, but it is not far off. If you are new to Go Shout Love, then you may not know that we do amazing things for amazing families with children on rare medical journeys. Each month, we feature a family and sell uniquely designed t-shirts to help that family with a particular purchase. However, with the craziness of what's going on in the world, we felt like we needed to take a pause from our normal schedule and be present in this moment. As I mentioned, Shane's nonprofit has implemented a COVID relief program, and they are sending gift cards to people with disabilities who need a bit of assistance during this season. So instead of featuring a family and supporting them financially in April, we are teaming up with Laughing at My Nightmare and sending 50% of gross profit from all sales during the month to their COVID-19 resource relief. More about that will be covered in this episode as well. Now leading this conversation is one of our co-directors, Josh Veach, and here he is to get things started.
Shane and Hannah, thank you so much for being on the Go Shout Love podcast. It's a pleasure to have you.
Hey, thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, first, for if there's any listeners that aren't familiar with who you are, just introduce yourselves, give our listeners a bit of your background, kind of where you grew up, where you live now, and the things you enjoy doing together.
All right. You want to go first?
Sure.
All right. You take it away.
My name is Hannah. I was born in Connecticut, and I grew up mostly there and kind of in Minnesota. I moved a lot.
All over the world.
That's a complicated question. I was a swimmer my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what else. I went to college. I just graduated last June. And then, you want to go now?
And then she met me.
And then I met Shane.
I'm Shane Burcaw. I grew up in Pennsylvania and lived there for the first 25 years of my life. While living there, I met Hannah over the internet, and we can talk about that in a bit. But Hannah and I really connected and began a relationship that was long distance for 2 years. And then I made the decision to move out. Well, we made the decision.
Yeah, but you moved.
I moved from Pennsylvania to Minneapolis to live with Hannah, where we live now. I don't remember what the other parts of the question were.
You're an author.
I'm 27 years old. Did I say that?
Oh, I'm 24.
You're 24. I'm an author, and I run a nonprofit organization that helps people with muscular dystrophy and all disabilities.
Do we have a YouTube channel?
I was getting to that.
Should mention that.
And yeah, Hannah and I run a YouTube channel together called Squirmy and Grubs about our interabled relationship. So
awesome.
I'm sure all of that today.
Yes. And what are the favorite things? What do you to do together? What do you guys enjoy doing together?
Right.
Ooh.
We like to cook.
Yeah.
We're not very good at it, but we've been learning slowly.
It's fun to practice cooking, right?
It really is, yeah. Unless you really ruin the meal. And then you're like, well, I just spent 2 hours, and now there's nothing to show for it.
And I'm even more hungry than I was when I started.
Yeah. A few months ago, Hannah and I adopted a 3-year-old Labradoodle named Chloe.
Chloe, okay.
Chloe's been a big part of our life lately, taking her for walks and playing with her. So, and then making videos, I think, is another big one. We put out content about every other day, and we spend a lot of time filming and editing and coming up with ideas. So, yeah. And Netflix.
Shane, you have a diagnosis of spinal muscular atrophy, and a lot of our listeners, we've covered many kids that have SMA, and so our listeners might be familiar with that. At a certain point, while you were still young, you mentioned you're an author, and you've kind of grown this channel that started with a blog called Laughing at My Nightmare, and you started that when you were still pretty young, and it kind of blew up and gave you all these opportunities, including meeting Hannah. What prompted you at that time to put your story out into the world?
I wish I had a more interesting answer for you. I just finished my freshman year of college, and it was a summer day, and I was bored out of my mind. I was studying writing in college, so I've always liked to write, but I really had no kind of reason for doing it. I was bored, and I had some funny stories to tell about living with my disease, and I put them on a blog and came up with a random name, Laughing at My Nightmare, and put it out there in the world, and it was really kind of the unexpected reaction that it got that led me to keep doing it. People really connected with the idea that we all face challenges, and laughing at them is a way to kind of help deal with them positively. And so, that really kicked everything off, and it snowballed from there.
Yeah. Has humor always played a significant role for you as you've navigated this journey?
Yeah, definitely. Like, my family, we're all very sarcastic. And a main way that we handle our kind of day-to-day struggles or annoyances, whatever, is by making fun of them, making light of them. And that, I mean, it's not like it doesn't work all the time. But yeah, laughing at things has definitely helped me deal with SMA throughout my life.
Yeah. I'm a pretty sarcastic person, and I found that people either like love your sarcasm or they think you're just the world's worst human, based on, not your sarcasm, but just people who are sarcastic in general. They either get it or they don't, and they appreciate it or they don't. So I appreciate it.
We get a lot of comments from our YouTube channel, people who don't understand sarcasm.
Yes. Yeah, like
the kid thing. Well, Shane made a joke in one of our videos. We were talking about if we wanted to have kids. And so the answer was yes, and we were talking about like having kids. And at the time, I hadn't been tested as a carrier.
Right.
So we were explaining that like our kids might have SMA if I was a carrier, but I probably wouldn't be a carrier. And Shane made a comment that was like, I hope our kids have SMA. Like, I don't want kids if they don't have SMA. Like, he didn't really care either way, but so many people commented and were like, I can't believe you said that. Like, I'm no longer watching your channel.
It's become like a new favorite game of ours.
Yeah.
To like put sarcastic jokes into our videos and then wait for the comments.
I think that's your favorite thing. That's not mine.
I love it.
Has that been a challenge to get to the point where you can just roll past some of those comments? Because you guys have a significant following on YouTube. We'll get to that a little bit more on the channel in just a second. But specifically in dealing with that feedback and those comments, either that are intentionally hateful or just don't get it, like they don't engage and really understand where you're coming from. Has it been difficult to get to the point where you're just like, they don't get it, it's fine?
I think it was harder for me, right?
Yeah.
You sort of.
Yeah, because of the blog, Laughing at My Nightmare, I kind of dealt with that a lot, like, years ago. And throughout my whole life, I've dealt with people treating me differently and just kind of not getting that I'm, like, a person that they can interact with.
Right.
So, yeah, I kind of was used to it. Hannah...
I was not, yeah. To see people write, like, mean things about you online, yeah, that was difficult for me to...
Yeah.
To, like...
We've gone through different phases of, like, dealing with it. Like, in the beginning, we would argue back in the comments, like, a lot, and that's a road to nowhere often.
Yeah. You learn the don't feed the trolls rule.
Yeah. But we did have some really, like, I don't know, cool moments where people that have left a lot of mean comments would eventually come back and be like, hey, I began watching you with a really ignorant point of view, and now that I've seen more of your videos, I feel terrible about the things that I said, and I get it now. Yeah. And that is rewarding for us to know that videos are helping people, like, look at disability in a better way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the channel on YouTube is called Squirmy and Grubs. And there you mentioned that you share about your life together and then different aspects of being in an interabled relationship. How did you come up with that name?
That name
slightly embarrassing.
I know. Well, so Squirmy is what Shane calls me, and it has called me for, like, since the beginning of our relationship. Yeah. And I called him Grubs, and so those are our nicknames for each other. Anyway, he calls me Squirmy because I move around in bed a lot, apparently. Okay. I think that that's true.
It's not apparently. You totally do. From the minute she lays down to the minute we wake up, she's tossing and turning and squirming all over the place.
Whatever. And I call Shane Grubs because his hands, I don't know if it's an SMA thing or just a Shane thing, but his hands are always so sweaty. And so they're always so grubby, and I just call him Grubs or Grubby. Yeah.
So when we made our YouTube channel, we were, like, trying to come up with a name that wasn't
a wheelchair pun.
A wheelchair cliche.
Yeah.
Like, every wheelchair-related channel I've ever seen is, like, rolling with me, like, real life. But, like, we were trying not to do that.
Yeah.
So we picked embarrassing nicknames.
Yeah.
Well, you nailed it. It's working for you.
It's just hard for people to hear us. Like, when we'll say to someone, they'll be like, what's your channel called? And Shane's like, Squirmy and Grubs. They're like, huh? Right. Like, no one has gotten it on their first listen.
Yeah, it is. It's unique for sure. What has been, I'm going to spring, this one wasn't on the questions ahead of time. What's been the most challenging video that you guys have done, either from a being open and sharing it or from a dealing with the responses, either one?
One of the most challenging videos, I think it's sort of like a couple of videos that we've done when we've been on vacation, either in California, we went to Disneyland for the Cure SMA conference, and then we went to Orlando just for fun a couple of times. And in each of those videos, we were in the pool together. And so Shane's in, like, a swimsuit, and I'm in a bikini. And we get so many comments about how I shouldn't be in a bikini, or, like, we're swimming and, like, using me to get views. Yeah. It's just so frustrating. And of course there's no comments about Shane in his swimsuit getting
in his one piece, right? Yeah.
A tiny little boxer swimsuit, but that's frustrating.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, in addition to the disability, like, ignorance, there's a lot of, like, sexism and all kinds of stuff that we have to deal with, which is tough. Whenever we talk about inaccessibility, which is something that we talk about often because we travel pretty often, which we're very grateful that we can do, we come across a lot of inaccessibility in the world. And we feel like we want to share that with our platform so that they can realize, oh, the world is not totally perfect for people with disabilities.
Yeah, right. Which is something I realized when we started dating, because I had never thought about it before. So it's helpful for people who are not dealing with that to see it.
Sure.
And we have been frustrated and kind of amazed how much pushback we get on those videos, because people don't know why, but feel this need to, like, defend other able-bodied, like, decisions or institutions, whatever. we get a lot. It's like, you know what? The world is fine. Like, stop complaining. You're having a great time. Like, don't be mad that you can't get into that one restaurant.
Yeah.
Like,
or we shouldn't have called them out. Like, that it was rude of us. Like, we could damage the business by calling them out. That's a big one.
But if you want to make change, you have to, like, let people know that they're not doing the right thing.
And, I mean, there's no ramp out front. Like, we're not calling them out. It's a very public decision to not be accessible.
Right.
So, getting some of that, it shows that, like, people are kind of on board with being inclusive until they feel like change needs to be made. And then they're like, whoa.
Yeah, until there's skin in the game, right?
Yeah.
Based on your experience, what are some of the most common misconceptions that people have about interabled relationships?
I think the biggest one kind of is all-encompassing of all the rest, and that is that I am not a valuable or, like, worthy partner of Hannah.
Yeah.
And that kind of springs off into a bunch of others, saying that Hannah must be
a gold digger
or delusional or like sick to ever like be attracted to me. And then there's a whole thing about like how her doing my daily care is a horrible thing, and it's going to ruin our relationship.
And my life.
Your life.
Yeah. There's that you pay me. Like, there's no way that I would date you. It's like a similar thing.
Yeah.
Like, there's the one that I'm being paid.
And then when we talk about, like, becoming parents, there's a lot about that. People saying that, like, in no way should we bring a kid into our situation because we would never be able to take care of it as two able-bodied parents would be able to.
Yeah, or that, like, your genes are deficient and we shouldn't pass them on.
Yeah.
People say that.
It's a lot. And I think what we're trying to show is that we are just two regular people who are in love and who care for and support and challenge each other just like any other relationship. And the fact of my not being able to walk is not a negative factor in our relationship.
Yeah. And, I think a lot of people, when they are exposed to something that's completely different than anything they've ever witnessed firsthand, they go to the extremes. Like they fill in their ignorance is filled in with just it's filled in with their best guess. There's no facts behind it. And so, the fact is that you both have your separate lives. Shane, you're still able to work. Hannah, the amount of you've talked about in other videos that really the amount of care and time that you put in is pretty it's not super significant. It doesn't take up a ton of time. But it takes a little bit. It just takes a few minutes for people to engage in your story to pick up on that. Like, it's not this huge secret. It's very clear. And so it's got to be frustrating that there's still so many people that can't get past that and just choose to move past their ignorance and engage in people like you who are putting out your story. But you've also mentioned how people will come back after leaving some of those comments, and you get that rewarding moment of kind of seeing their entire perspective shift because you keep living it out in front of them. And I think that's really powerful. In different videos, you guys have shared about when you go out in public and if you're at a restaurant or whatever, kind of what the different responses are. And Hannah, specifically for you, how have these experiences opened your eyes to the realities of how people with disabilities are viewed and treated that maybe you weren't aware of before your relationship with Shane?
Yeah, I wasn't aware of anything like disability related before I met Shane. So I think on one of our first dates, I've told this story before in our videos, but a woman came up to our table while we were eating in a restaurant. It was a diner that was like right near your house, one of Shane's favorite restaurants that he took me to.
So a nice date.
Yeah, and a happy date.
Well, diner. No.
It wasn't not
It was
nice.
a casual date.
And this woman comes up to our table, and like I didn't even have like an inkling of what could possibly be happening. Like, this had never happened to me before. I thought maybe like she knew you from like, the town, whatever, like, whatever. And she instead walks up to Shane, doesn't say anything, puts her hands on his shoulders and starts praying really loudly. And everyone in the restaurant, like really loudly, not like just talking out loud. Like, she was like yelling prayers.
Oh my gosh.
everyone in the restaurant turns and is staring, and I like.
And prayers to like heal me.
Well, it was to give you a happy life.
Give him a happy life.
Yeah.
So that was a lovely way to end the date.
You actually said to her, you were like, thank you. Like, you interrupted her and you were like, thank you, but I have a happy life. And she stopped and was like, that's not what I meant. And then Shane said, I know what you meant. And she walked away.
Anyway, yeah.
That was a good interaction.
How did you feel about that? Was that,
I mean, I was shocked.
Bizarre.
And that was my first example of that ever. I mean, I would never have guessed that.
But that wasn't the first time that had happened to you, right, Shane?
Oh, no. That's a common thing. People thinking that because I use a wheelchair, my life must be sad and lonely, and that they can help by healing me or giving me $20.
Yeah.
It's just ridiculous stuff like that. I think another big thing that happens out in public is people assume that Hannah is not my significant other. And I wrote a book titled "Strangers Assume My Girlfriend is My Nurse," because people will come and be like, "Oh, is that your brother?
Or your son?"
Or your son.
I've gotten son, which is a little bit weird because Shane's older than me.
And like, it's weird, first of all, to even make that kind of comment. Like,
right.
You would never walk up to two able-bodied people and be like, "Is that your brother?"
Right.
Like, you just don't do that. But because of the wheelchair, they feel like A, they can insert themselves, and then B, that they can, or they think that they're right in thinking that I'm your kid or your patient or whatever.
A lot of times people think that you're not competent also.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So another time, this was more recent, so I was like, I was expecting this to happen almost.
Well-versed.
Yeah, I was well-versed by now. But a waitress, we were at a restaurant on a road trip, and I went to the bathroom, and the waitress came to the table, and Shane asked for the check.
Mm-hmm.
And she said okay and left. And then I came back to the table, and she came back without the check and said to me, "He asked for the check. Is that okay?" And I was
my
like,
gosh.
"Yes, that's fine." Like, you don't even know what to say when stuff like that happens.
Like, I know I don't have great facial hair, but I have.
You interacted with her throughout the entire meal.
I know,
this
yeah.
is the end.
I know. Yeah.
Crazy.
So,
Gosh.
Kind of the norm, and that's what we're trying to hopefully change.
Sure.
In a way by informing more people.
Yeah, and showing people because again, I never knew that any of this existed. So.
Mm.
We will get back to our conversation in just a second. As I mentioned before, we at Go Shout Love felt like we needed to take a pause from our normal schedule and be present in this moment. We have a wonderful family that we plan to introduce to you in April, and you will get to meet them soon, but we are doing something different this month. In April, we have launched 3 new designs that are aiming to help remind us that we are all in this together, that we should be responsible for and to each other. As we've mentioned, today's guest has a nonprofit that has implemented a COVID-19 relief program, sending gift cards to people with disabilities who need a bit of assistance during this season. So, instead of featuring a family and supporting them financially in April, we are teaming up with Laughing at My Nightmare and sending 50% of gross profit from all sales during this month to their COVID-19 resource relief. Go to our website, goshout.love, and shop around and help us shout love and make an impact. Besides these great shirts, there are hoodies, mugs, hats, and more. And now back to our conversation with Shane and Hannah.
Seeing that, especially maybe those first few months for you, Hannah, how did it reshape how you viewed the world and how you just viewed people in general, if it did reshape it at all?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely reshaped it. I think now when we go out in public, I view people a little bit more cynically probably because I'm expecting, it's like things have happened so many times that when we walk into a restaurant, I'm like, I wonder if this person will ask Shane like what he wants to eat or if I'm going to have to, do something to inform them that they can talk to Shane. So I think it's definitely shaped how I view the world. I think you've probably grown up viewing it that way, but now when we go out, I'm like, oh, if someone comes up to us, I automatically am like, oh no. When in the past, I never would have, guessed that they would say something rude, and now they tend to say something that's not very nice.
Hannah studied sociology in college. I'm going to brag a little bit. And for her senior thesis, she kind of took all of this personal stuff that had been happening and decided to study Yeah, and how to the prevalence of stuff like this for people with physical disabilities. And so she interviewed how many people?
40.
Like 30 people with a variety of physical disabilities.
Yeah.
And identified the ways that microaggressions like these happen in life. And it was really interesting and sad to see the overlap. Like everyone with a physical disability deals with stuff like this on a very consistent basis. So it was a really great research project and eye-opening about, it's not just us that deal with it, it's everyone.
Absolutely. Hannah, did you publish that anywhere?
No, I never took the steps to do that. I really should. And a lot of people have asked to.
All the professors were like, publish this.
I know. Well, I don't know. I didn't ever figure out how to. I probably should.
It's really good, and it's what led to the book that we're writing together. A publisher reached out to us, and they were like, hey, we would love to have you two write something about interabled couples. And they read her essay that I had sent them, and they were like, Hannah needs to be a part of this. Like, this is really cool. So Hannah and I are working on that book now. That's another shameless plug there. But
when did you say that's coming out?
That would be out over
18 months.
18 months.
Okay.
A while, yeah.
Okay.
But we're profiling about 30 interabled couples, people with a variety of disabilities and lives and all that all over the world, and just telling their story and kind of how they fell in love and what their life was like. So
that's awesome.
Yeah,
we'll put a note in the calendar as a reminder for about 18 months from now.
Crazy.
That's awesome. Shane, you've talked in other places about wrestling with what you've called burden complex. Can you share about what that is?
Yes. So what I call my burden complex is a feeling that many people who require care feel or deal with at some point in their journey. It's this feeling of guilt that I need help with things. It's something that kind of began in childhood and increased as I got older and lived through experiences that made me feel like I was a burden to other people by asking them for help. And it is a super unhealthy way of thinking about yourself and thinking about disability. And it's a challenge. But as Hannah and I became closer and my burden complex began to reveal itself to her, because I would ask her for a sip of my beer and then immediately say, sorry, assuming that it was bothering her. Hannah, like the trooper that she is, took a while to really remind me over and over and over again, Shane, you are not a burden. I am not feeling annoyed or burdened by helping you with these daily things. I love helping you. I love being with you, and that involves helping you here and there. And so I've moved to a healthier point of view about the whole thing, but I do think it's something that a lot of people deal with.
Sure.
Yeah.
What tips or advice would you have for people that struggle resonates with?
I would say to believe the people in your life when they tell you that you're not a burden. I was in the beginning when Hannah would be like, Shane, this isn't bothering me. I don't mind helping you change or use the bathroom. In my head, I would say to myself, well, she has to say that. If she didn't say that, it would be mean. She's lying to me, but she really does feel annoyed by all this. And I was just not trusting her that she was telling the truth. And so I think the biggest thing, the turning point for me was when I realized, oh, she really means all this. And it was a beautiful thing to realize that, she was honestly, not burdened by my care. So I think that is a big one, like just the things that people are telling you, and talk to a therapist. Like there have been times in my life when I probably should have been talking to someone, but there's like all the stigma about mental health, and I think we need to fix that. Because I think talking to a professional can be really helpful as well.
Yeah, and that's great advice, regardless of level of ability or whatever.
Yeah.
Hannah, from your standpoint, as someone who's giving care and kind of journeying alongside of Shane, what would you say to somebody that's in a similar position in helping someone work through that burden complex of how do you reassure them and help them know that you're doing what you're doing out of love and out of care and out of support?
Yeah, I think communication, just repeating it, patience, making sure that, you're saying it often or whenever the person is upset. I mean, it took like a year or two. I mean,
and there's still moments now where, yeah.
Exactly. Sure. Like, still say that sometimes. So I think, repetition and just, talking about it, being open to talking about it and checking in on how you're feeling about caregiving and making sure that both people are comfortable and repeatedly, talking about the subject. I think that's important.
Yeah. One of the things that is really great about the work that you're doing is that you tackle ableism head on. And one of the ways that I've been challenged personally in this area is just my language and understanding that how we say certain things, even with the best of intentions, can be discriminatory and hurtful. Again, not even intending to. And so just trying to be intentional about learning better ways to communicate clearly and with language that's more inclusive. Are there common phrases that you guys encounter that are especially frustrating to you?
I think in terms of our relationship, a lot of people will leave comments on our YouTube channel saying, Hannah is amazing, or Hannah is an angel, something along,
praising
those
it,
terms. Yeah, praising me. And they mean it, nicely and kindly, but it's on the flip side, it means that like I'm nice for being with Shane because something's wrong with him.
Right.
Like it puts Shane down.
The undercurrent of the comment is Shane is less than.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So those mean well, but anything that is saying like I'm so amazing for being with Shane is frustrating.
Yeah. And language around disability is hard because, disabled people are people, and they have different preferences about how they and others talk about their disability. For a long, long time, I felt really strongly that it should be person-first language that was being used, someone with a disability, a person with a disability. And then I met a bunch of disabled people who wanted to be told disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was like, oh, that's ableist of you. But then I was like, they're the ones that make the rules about their, their self. So it's a case-by-case basis, I guess you would say.
Yeah. I think wheelchair bound is one that you don't like.
Yeah. But whenever we see wheelchair bound, that annoys us. Because wheelchairs are not inhibitive, they're freeing.
Yeah.
So that's a big one. And then people just generally like talking down to me, calling me like big guy or bud or buddy, where it's clear that they're in some way, viewing me as a young kid or someone with a lesser mental or emotional capacity. That's all. Yeah.
I want to shift gears and get into your nonprofit work. And so you started Laughing at My Nightmare, Inc., which is a nonprofit, and it's carrying on in the tradition of even the blog title from way back. So tell us about what that is and who it serves and how it came to be.
Yeah, so I started Laughing at My Nightmare with my cousin, Sarah, while we were both in college together. And it was as the blog was taking off and I was building this audience that we realized there might be a way that we can use this new platform on the blog to do some good in the world.
Yep.
So Sarah and I, with very no idea how to start a company, started a company. And we did that by surrounding ourselves with people who didn't know what they were doing, so that they could kind of advise and mentor and teach us along the way. So Lafayette Nightmare Inc. today, in its, like 8th or 9th year of being alive, serves the muscular dystrophy community. We give equipment like wheelchairs and breathing machines and technology and communication devices to people who apply for it. So we call that our No More Nightmares program. And we've been able to give over $250,000 in equipment in the last few years, which we're really excited about.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Thank you. And then just recently, in light of all the coronavirus news and the way that our world is changing by the day, it seems, we began a new program that is opened up to people with all disabilities, where you can apply for a $100 Visa gift card to help get the items that you need while you're in quarantine, whether that is food or whatever it is, essential items to help you live. And we've been really amazed and grateful for the feedback that's out in the world already.
Yeah. What has been the most rewarding aspect of running the nonprofit for you personally, Shane?
I think just hearing from clients who have applied for an item and then they come back later and tell us how their whole world has changed because of it. One example, we gave an elevator to a young girl who is living with a form of muscular dystrophy, and prior to having that, it's a lift. Prior to having the lift, she was not able to take her wheelchair into her home. The family bought a house and was planning on making it accessible, but then was not able to. So she would have to be lifted out of her chair and sit on the couch or a bed, and it wasn't comfortable or fun, or she wasn't functional in her home. They applied for an elevator that would allow her to get her chair inside, and it changed everything for them. She could now go in and out as she pleased, and that was a really cool moment for us to be like, wow, we began this having no idea what we're doing, and now we're giving away elevators and helping in that cool way. So yeah,
that's really awesome, because the work that you're doing is literally present in the most important aspects of her life every day. Like the ability for her to feel at home and in her own home is something that you guys have been able to partner with their family to do and provide for them. And I don't think there's anything more rewarding than that, to being able to share, to rally people to do something that is literally impacting their day-to-day life. And so that's incredible. What about on the flip side of that? What's been the most challenging?
Fundraising.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of touched on it there. Letting the public know why our programs are important, and convincing them that they are so important that they should donate their hard-earned money so that we can help other people. Yeah. And that is always a work in progress. Hannah and I do a lot of promotion for the nonprofit, and it's something that, it's tough to ask people for money.
Right.
But without the generosity of others, our nonprofit would not be able to change lives. So, I think fundraising is a hard part. And I will say that Sarah, my cousin, has just been phenomenal in kind of learning and growing into, she's our director of development. So all the fundraising is her main day-to-day job. So Sarah is amazing and has been really helpful in helping the nonprofit become what it is today.
Awesome. You touched on the new COVID-19 resource relief that you have opened up and are serving people in a very immediate need. The world's just kind of in a weird place right now. It's kind of affecting all of us, and so I'm curious for the two of you in your setting, how are you processing this season of unknowns?
That's a tough one.
I know.
I mean, yeah, life is weird right now. How are we processing it?
I think we've been really anxious.
Yeah.
Like, both of us have had trouble sleeping. It's just, you hear a lot of really scary stuff.
Yeah, and we're grateful that, like, we are in a position where we're able to stay home and self-isolate, because it could be a lot worse. We could have jobs out in the world, but with writing and YouTube, I mean, we can do all that from our living room. But it's that anxiety that, like, we don't know what the world's going to be like in a week. And for someone like me, with a body that would not be able to handle the virus, it's an extra level of, like, scary, because my lungs are not built for handling pneumonia, and this virus seems to go right for the lungs. So we're doing we tend to be careful and just trying to take it day by day. Yeah. Lots of Netflix.
Yeah.
Lots of what?
Lots of Netflix.
Oh, Netflix, yes. I think the whole world is... I'm surprised we haven't crashed the internet, honestly. I have one last question that I just thought of, if it's okay. And it's more on the medical side of things. Specifically in the SMA world, there's been advancements in treatments in Spinraza, and I know there's one treatment that I think is fairly new in the last year or so that, when given to a child very early on, if there's a diagnosis, completely alters, to my understanding, the physical effects of SMA for that child. What has that journey been like for you on a treatment side of things? And then do you stay up to date on some of those, trials and different things that happen in that space, in the medical and treatment space?
Yeah. So the advent of all these new treatments has been incredible. I still remember the night when I got the email from the FDA saying that they had approved Spinraza, and I was not up to date on kind of what was happening in the medical world or the research world. So I knew very little, and suddenly there was a treatment that was saying that it would stop the progression of my disease. And that was always kind of the hardest part about living with SMA, was not knowing what my future would be like physically. But now, being on Spinraza, I can confidently say that I will physically be right where I am now in 10, 20, or 30 years. And that is, I mean, do you remember when I called you and told you that news?
Yeah.
And just cried like a baby?
I remember.
It's been really cool. And the gene therapy that's out there now is incredible to see how, kids that would otherwise never be able to sit like me, are standing and walking and running. There is a oral treatment that's being reviewed by the FDA right now, which should be a daily oral dose. That is really promising in the studies that we've seen. It's been cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing about that. It's something that is, we have some kids that are on that take Spinraza as well, and seeing the how that research comes to play and impact, and they'll share stories of kids that are younger that have, they're in the gene therapy, and it's amazing that we're at the level of research and some of those things that are happening, and knowing that that some of these kids are going to have different opportunities, that different they're going to have less barriers to have to work through, and it's exciting to see. And so So I'm sure that you probably keep a slightly closer eye on some of the research things now than maybe you did before.
Yeah, I do. And anything that can be done to maintain my function or the function of others is like, I think a really cool thing. So we do keep our eye on it. But I think it should be said that like, it's a big issue, but my life was great before Spinraza as well. And I think that's just something that is important to be said. With or without treatment, life with Spinraza life with SMA, it can be beautiful and great. And, the treatment is a great plus, but life without it was amazing as well.
Function doesn't determine value. And that's something that we struggle with collectively as a society. And I think that's probably a lot of the underlying thing. That's probably one of the underlying issues of those different experiences that you talk about and the assumptions that people have in their ignorance is that we assume that function creates value. And that's not at all true. And so, well, guys, thank you so much for your time and for being a guest on the podcast. I've been incredibly thankful for this conversation. Before we wrap up, tell our listeners where they can connect with you in addition to the YouTube channel.
Follow us on Instagram. That's another place that we share kind of our day-to-day, whatever we're doing.
Yeah.
Where else?
We have a Facebook page for our YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
That's not
we don't update it very often.
Well, we
don't
have
look at our Facebook page.
Yeah, I think Instagram is what we use the most.
Yeah, and I would encourage you to check out Laughing at My Nightmare, the nonprofit, as well, because we're trying to do some good in the world, just like you.
Yeah, well, you absolutely are, and so keep up the good work, and we enjoy following along and getting to know you guys better through your videos and through your posts, and we'll continue to do that and share what you're doing.
Thank you, Josh. We appreciate it.
You guys have a great day. Thanks so much for your time.
All right, you too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I want to take a second to thank Shane and Hannah for joining us. This was a great episode, and I really enjoyed their conversation and their insight. We are thrilled to be able to shout love with Laughing at My Nightmare this month and all that they are doing for their COVID-19 relief program. If you are new to Go Shout Love and enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe to us. We have some great episodes in the past and some amazing episodes coming up ahead, including next week as we are talking with Mindy Shire and Runway of Dreams. Please feel free to rate and review this podcast and share this podcast so that we can shout love as far as we can. Go to our website, goshout.love, and shop around so that you can contribute to Laughing at My Nightmare's COVID-19 relief program in the month of April. And, as always, go and shout love.